Ever faced a tech problem that left you scratching your head? Whether it's a computer that won't boot, a printer that refuses to print, or a mysterious error code, troubleshooting can feel overwhelming. But what if you had a step-by-step method to diagnose and fix any issue like a pro? In this video, I'll walk you through the ultimate troubleshooting process, from identifying the problem to documenting your solution. Whether you're an IT newbie or a seasoned tech enthusiast, this guide will help you solve tech problems faster and more efficiently. Ready to become a troubleshooting expert? Let's dive in. Troubleshooting method. Having a good troubleshooting methodology allows you to follow essential steps to diagnose and repair a computer. These processes include user dialogue, determining how and when the problem occurred, determining the cause, tests, verification, and documentation. It is important to know the order and the different troubleshooting processes, especially if you aim to pass the certification, allowing you to become an IT support technician. We will therefore detail all the steps to obtain effective troubleshooting. The first point is to identify the problem. If you find yourself in front of a computer to repair it, there must be a reason. That is to say, something unusual has happened, which disrupts the user's productivity. So, you should start by identifying the problem, talking with the user. Ask him, for example, to show you what's wrong. Is the problem with an error code, or an application that is no longer accessible, or even who doesn't answer? Only then can you ask the great question, allowing you to have more information without necessarily accusing the user. Don't forget your communication skills, which we saw in the previous course. Ask, has there been a recent change on the computer that could have had an impact on the current problem? With this question, which doesn't directly accuse the user, it's as if, in reality, you're actually asking them. But turn it differently. Did you manipulate the computer? Have you installed an unauthorized program? Have you connected a USB stick from outside? Of course, this type of accusatory question is not to be asked directly to the customer. The main goal is to find the right dialogue so that the user opens up to you and helps you solve the problem. Then, as soon as you have recovered as much information as possible, you can examine the system logs and possibly look for defective software. It is important, before changing anything, to back up the most critical files. Otherwise, the user might not be happy and could report this lack of precaution to your superior. In most certification exams, technicians must imperatively back up the system before starting to work on it, even if, in reality, we know very well that this is not all the case. After you have identified the problem, you need to establish a theory about the root cause of the problem. That is, you need to analyze the problem and find the cause. Most of the time, depending on the symptoms, you will certainly need to carry out internal or external research. A good example of external research is the internet. It's an extremely powerful tool when you know how to do research, because it allows you to provide quick answers to very technical problems. If the customer's computer displays an error message, well, you just have to copy-paste this error into a search engine. And an internal search consists of asking for help from other technicians or carrying out research in a database, which lists all past problems with the resolution processes. Remember that it's not necessarily bad not to know everything, especially in the world of IT, which is a field that is evolving very quickly. During the troubleshooting process, you need to use all of your senses. Don't hesitate to open the case and try to see if there is a defective connector or debris from one of the cards that make up the computer. A visual examination of the exterior is just as important. For example, if the user can't connect to the network and start by checking if the cable is plugged in, and especially if it's in good condition. It can happen that by dint of rolling on it with an office chair, well, the wires deteriorate inside. Also, take the time to listen to the purr of the computer. A PC that works properly doesn't make much noise. You should hear that the blast coming from the fans spinning. On the other hand, if you hear some kind of little clicking or squeaking sound, well, it's not very reassuring. The hard drive could be the cause of the problem. We'll go into more detail about hard drives in another chapter. Don't forget your nose either in the troubleshooting session. If you smell the burning smell, this can also help you find the source of the problem. In this case, all you need is a flare. After establishing a theory, which makes sense, we can start testing it to determine the cause and see if it solves the problem. Most of the time, the theory test does nothing but confirm that something is broken. In this case, the solution would be to replace the defective component. But if your theory is not confirmed, then you will have to find a new one to test it again. I know that these are quite theoretical processes, and that in general we move forward by feeling, without worrying about the main troubleshooting steps. But for the exam, these are important processes to understand and learn by heart. To come back to these famous processes, if the solution to your theory is within your competence, then that's perfect. Before taking action, don't forget to check with your management to make sure you have permission to intervene. You must always take into account the different policies of the company and follow the procedures well to relieve yourself of any responsibility. And if you don't have the skills or even the permissions to solve the problem, then you will have to report the problem. It's okay to escalate a problem. Remember, one person can't know everything or even solve every problem. There are a few ways to escalate a problem. In fact, it all depends once again on the company's policy. For example, it can be calling your supervisor or to fill out a form that will be sent to another department. After testing your theory yourself, you should have a good idea of the problem. Now is the time to establish an action plan to solve the problem. That is to say, to implement the solution. This action plan can sometimes require several steps, such as order a replacement part or make a backup of the data. Let us now move on to verification and prevention. You've just solved the problem, or at least you think the problem is solved, so you'll be able to start the verification process, adding a little touch of prevention. First, if you think the issue is resolved, you should perform the check-in with the client or user. For example, if it was a printer problem and your theory pointed to the print spooler service that would be blocked, and well after restarting it, you should ask the client to print in front of you a few pages to check that it works. That way, you might even see if it's not a user error that is causing the problem. It's as essential for a good technician to know what their users are doing to help them do their job better. And secondly, you have to find something so that the problem doesn't happen again. For some problems, there are quite obvious measures to put in place, such as checking that the antivirus is up to date after troubleshooting an infected file problem. But for others, it's sometimes impossible, as for example, if it's the hard drive that has given up the ghost. In any case, don't hesitate to raise awareness among your users as much as possible. The more you educate them, the more comfortable you will be able to stay at your desk. And the last point is to document as much as possible the actions and results you have had on the problem. There is a quote that perfectly reflects the interest of documenting everything, which is, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." This quote comes from a philosopher who for sure could have been a very great support technician. As a technician, the last step in your troubleshooting is to document all of your theories actions, and results. The idea is to know: what was the problem? What did you do to solve it? What worked? What went wrong? Good documentation is the result of a good technician. Listing all the problems allows you to keep a history of the various repairs that have taken place. For example, if you and your fellow technicians solve a specific problem on the same user's computer several times, and after the fourth time, you could consider changing their PC completely rather than repairing it for the umpteenth time. Documentation also helps other technicians to make the right decision, or to know if they should continue a task on which another technician would have worked on it. Having documentation of what you did also means that you don't have to rely on your memory. If one of your colleagues asks you what you did to solve a type of problem several months ago, documentation also helps cover your back. In a world where there are more and more procedures, you need to document as much as possible.